It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. And we are going to start here in Nigeria, where the Independent National Electoral Commission has released the official timetable for Nigeria's 2027 general elections, outlining key dates for voting, party primaries, campaigns, and voter registration. The announcement comes amid growing concerns over the delayed passage of the Amendment Electoral Act currently before the National Assembly. INEC had on February the 4th indicated that it had completed work on the election timetable and schedule of activities despite the delay. According to the schedule, the presidential and National Assembly elections will be held on Saturday, the 20th of February 2027. Governorship and State House of Assembly elections will follow 2 weeks later on Saturday, the 6th of March, 2027. Now, of course, following this announcement, some Nigerians have come out to say that this time of February 2027 is an important time in the lives of Muslim Nigerians because of Salah holidays. But I think we're going to take the next story before we chat on this.
All right, in the meantime, the House of Representatives will reconvene for an emergency sitting on Tuesday, February 17th, 2026, to review matters arising from the announcement of the 2027 general election timetable by the Independent National Electoral Commission. A statement issued by spokesman of the House, Akin Rotimi, outlined that the session is being called to draw attention to the constitutional and national significance of the development and the need for timely legislative consideration. It goes on to state that the emergency sitting reflects the resolve of the House to respond promptly to issues with far-reaching implications for the nation's democratic process, and that deliberations will focus on relevant legislative matters connected to the announcement, in line with the constitutional responsibilities of the National Assembly. All right, so this was, an important development in the political trajectory of our nation. The timetables are out finally, from INEC. Professor Josh Amukwito himself, made the announcement. But it looks to me like INEC is now faced with two very important, shall we say, dilemma, given the fact that it didn't envisage that there will be dichotomy between the House of Reps and the Senate, hoping that all that will be done regarding the amendments to the Electoral Act of 2022, will just scale through. They were actually hoping that by December, everything will have been done. But here we are, Senate, doing back and forth, has now called yet another meeting, to again take a look at what is happening. And then after INEC announced the timetable, which everybody has been looking forward to, essentially kickstarting the political calendar year, it turns out that by February, March of next year, it's likely that it will fall around, Ramadan, and public holidays, and people have raised concerns, which is the reason why House of Reps are saying that, we need to reconvene to look at what is happening. But of course, also remarkably, by last night, this morning, INEC has also issued a press statement to state that, they are aware that it has now been brought to their attention, even though they acted within the law, based on the Act of 2022, given the fact that the amendment hasn't come into effect. So they are basically saying that maybe part of what will be considered is to first to consult and then to look at the possibility of shifting the dates, which therefore will radically affect what time the presidential election will take place. May no longer be Saturday, February 20th. That has already been announced. And then for the governorship and the House of Assembly elections, it may no longer be March the 6th, Saturday. And therefore what that means is that instead of what is required of INEC to announce the timetables 360 days to the elections, they're now looking at the possibility of maybe 300 days, to give a room of about 2 months. What that means, therefore, nobody's sure yet. Does it mean that elections will move closer to inauguration, or it will move backwards, to around November this year or December or January. Those are the issues that, of course, will take the center stage throughout, the coming week. And I don't envy INEC. They will have to do a lot of work.
I definitely don't envy INEC, and as you pointed out, the spanner in the works was thrown here by the Senate. Of course, the House of Representatives had passed the Electoral Act before they went on Christmas break. However, the Senate did not do so. There has been a lot of communication between members, between stakeholders and between INEC about what this Electoral Act would look like. Proactiveness is very important, and governance is something that should always be taken seriously. However, the Senate not only delayed passing it before they went on break in December, they did not pass it, but when they came back, they threw a spanner in the works by altering significant sections that a lot of people felt had been agreed by all key stakeholders, both civil service organizations, members of government, and INEC officials themselves. And so now that's why we have seen protests. And of course, not only are we dealing with this new election timetable, when it would hold, whether February 20th or not, or March 6th or not, we're also dealing with the fact that INEC has presented a budget for elections that's 837 billion naira for running of our elections. And so you have to ask, are they budgeting using the current laws, or are they budgeting using the expected amendments, particularly with the IREV upgrades that they've included?
Which would take about 200 billion.
Yes, which they've included in their budget. Yeah. And so these are the key things that are important. And I do think that sometimes, I think we need to focus on the actual machinery of governing a people. When we're running, and we're going to talk about later, when we're running three budgets concurrently, that's why you can have the Minister of Health saying 36 million is released for his capital expenditure. Because of the confusion going on around
the overlapping budgets.
The overlapping budgets. When we have a National Assembly, a Senate that goes on break without completing important work that's time bound and sensitive as our Electoral Act, that's when we have these problems coming up. Of course, Honorable Akinrotimi has said the House is going to have an emergency session on Tuesday the 17th.
Yes.
When they come back, they've been doing budget consideration, so there has not been plenary for 2 weeks. And also, last week, there was expected that there will be a conference between the House Committee on Electoral Matters and the Senate Committee on Electoral Matters. Now, that conference didn't hold. They have now moved it to Monday. I'm wondering if they're going to move it again to consider, giving what has happened and that the House is going to meet. But again, all this back and forth scatteredness did not have to happen. And for me, it really shows that we need to take governance seriously,
particularly for our lawmakers, who actually represent their constituents and voters a lot more than many people in the executive, because they were voted for.
Of course.
But like I said, it will be an interesting week, for lawmakers, for INEC, and for Nigerians who are waiting to see what happens. When will we, be voting? When will campaigns start? How many months of campaigns, given the peg on the amount that political parties and candidates can raise, towards election? We'll interesting. All right, now Nigeria's pro-democracy movement confronted a heavy security presence at the National Assembly within the week, where they demanded the incorporation of real-time electronic transmission of results in the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2026, ahead of elections early next year. Joined by former presidential candidate Peter Obi, the protesters resolved to put up a no-retreat, no-surrender campaign until the lawmakers make electronic transmission compulsory. Our Rice correspondent, Friday Oloko, filed this report.
As preparations for the 2027 general elections gather momentum, tensions are rising over proposed amendments to the Electoral Act.
Are we lazy? No!
This is a gathering of over 70 civil society organizations committed to electoral reforms and protection of democracy in Nigeria. They are demanding that the amendment bill explicitly provide for mandatory real-time electronic transmission of results from polling units to INEC's IREV portal. Some of the groups involved in the protests are Yaga Africa, Movement for the Transformation of Nigeria, the Center for Transparency and Advocacy, Action Aid Nigeria, the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room, the National Opposition Movement, and the African Democratic Congress. With their mats and supplies, they are vowing to sustain their action until lawmakers adopt their position. Protesters remain outside, having been denied entry into the complex by security operatives.
Our electoral process must be transparent. Our electoral process must be free and fair. I've said it several times. If you want to answer His Excellency, if you want to answer distinguished, if you want to answer honorable, the process through which you come into office must be honorable, it must be distinguished, and it must be excellent.
The executive director of the Center for Transparency and Advocacy, Faith Mwatishi, warns that any short of real-time transmission could undermine the electoral credibility.
The implication for the 2027 election is that we will now allow the judiciary again to decide who governs this country. We will have to review the role of judiciary in deciding final election results, because we are here today because of the judgment that was given by the judiciary concerning the transmission of results.
Convener of the National Opposition Movement, Bishop Okoronko, and ADC Deputy National Publicity Secretary Queen Oki, described the resistance to electronic transmission as an attempt to weaken the people's will.
We are here to tell the National Assembly to make sure that electronic transmission of results from the polling units to the INEC Collation Center is made mandatory. And also to say that it should be a capital offense for anybody to try to mutilate a result.
We want a situation in this 2027 where the results that are gotten from the polling units are the same when it is announced.
ADC chieftain and former presidential aide Loretta Onoche calls for stronger democratic safeguards in the public interest.
So I have come to show solidarity with other Nigerians, because in a democratic setting, everyone has one vote, and the majority at the end of the day carries the vote.
The laws that they make is for good governance. That is why we have come today to talk about the real-time electronic transmission of results.
With protesters threatening to prolong sit-out, attention now turns to the Senate and whether lawmakers will yield to mounting pressure or hold firm in the days ahead.
Protests in Abuja, of course, known faces, ADC, PDP, opposition here and there. Yeah. But of course, we are expecting a bright mind, brilliant mind to come, to talk to us, later in the program. Onyekachi, Ubani, SAN, who understands this sort of a thing, so that we don't, but of course, it was expected. The only thing that people will be wondering is, is this a mass movement kind of protest, or is this the opposition saying, we think that this will affect our chances if you do not mandate real-time transmission of electronic results? You were in Abuja when this happened, right?
Yes, I was in Abuja when this happened, and very interesting, there was a woman who was protesting, and she said that she got married, and a year into her marriage, barely a year into her marriage, her husband was kidnapped and killed. And that is very personal for her, and that's why she was on the, on the doorsteps of the National Assembly. And I do think that our lawmakers need to take this very seriously, because a lot of times they view all protests as sponsored, particularly if you see some popular, maybe social media commentators or members of the opposition out there
who may be aligned to certain candidates.
Yes. However, they also need to consider that there are Nigerians, everyday Nigerians, who feel that their only power is their vote, and they take that very seriously. And so as they go into deliberations next week, they must understand that people are emotional, and you should not disenfranchise or disempower people who already feel disempowered.
That's very correct. That's very correct. Don't disenfranchise Nigerians, real-time transmission of results, and make it mandatory, particularly if you are the dominant party, what is the fear?
Right. All the governors, you have most of the governors. You have supermajority in both chambers. Yeah. If you're that popular, then there should be no fear. And it's very important that we remind people that even INEC itself says it has over 90% connectivity as of 3 years ago. These things are very important. And the better version of the law is the version of the House of Representatives passed before they went home for Christmas.
Absolutely. But, as germane as that argument is, I think a corollary of the argument should also be the need to have electronic voting, not just transmission of results, electronic voting itself. Hopefully we will get there, at some point. All right, we'll move on. Chaos erupted on Wednesday as Minister of Works Dave Umahi appeared before the Joint Committee of the National Assembly to defend his ministry's 3.4 trillion naira. Trouble started after some of the lawmakers picked offense at the minister's response to their queries, resulting in a brief face-off between the minister and Senator Adams Oshiomhole, which snowballed into a full-blown shouting match between the presiding committee chairman, Senator Rufai Hanga, and principal officer, Senator Onyekachi Nwebonyi. Our Rice correspondent, Omon Bazwaye, reports.
The budget defense session, which was supposed to provide clarity on how Nigeria intends to spend 3.4 trillion naira to improve its road infrastructure, soon became chaotic as all hell was let loose.
You can't shout at me. I will shout at you.
At the center of the high drama is Senator Onyekachi Nwebonyi and presiding committee chairman, Senator Rufai Hanga. Nwebonyi became upset after Hanga continually hits the gavel, trying to stop him after he went on an endless praise of the Minister of Works, Dave Umahi.
You can't shout at me.
I will shout at you. I can preside over this over you.
You can't.
I spoke for 5 minutes.
You cannot.
But somebody spoke for 15 minutes.
I'm also a president. They all ask questions. You are just praising the minister. You should allow us to thank him. Excuse me.
Efforts from other senators like Ali Ndume to calm Nwebonyi fell on deaf ears as the Ebonyi State Senator went on and on, saying that being a principal officer from the ruling party, he can take over the session.
But equally, I must tell you here that it was wrong for you to refer to an elderly person and to a leader too that is from the minority.
Yes, that is what he is.
Yes, I must tell you the truth. I must tell you the truth.
You cannot tell me to stop.
I don't think.
For 15 minutes. I'm talking for 5 minutes. And it's time to stop. I can't stop.
I was elected with 10 times the votes. Your camera.
But there was a build-up to the confrontation between Nwebonyi and Hanga. A few of the lawmakers are taking exception to the way the Minister of Works, Dave Umahi, was responding to their questions. The toughest query came from Senator Adams Oshiomhole, who wanted to know why the Abuja-Kaduna road was revoked from Julius Berger and allegedly awarded to a generator manufacturing company, Meikano, that is little known for road construction.
You have no regret in revoking it from Julius Berger. Fine. I am not a director of Julius Berger. I probably will also do the same while you refuse. But what I fail to understand is why you award the contract to a new company that is formed by Meikano. Meikano has been known for generator distribution.
Umahi's defense was to challenge the lawmakers to come and inspect one of the roads being undertaken by the company, vying to resign if they find the road to be substandard.
And my answer to the single senator is, I challenge you for project inspection and bring the best of your consultants. If you do it and it fails, I will throw in the towel.
Next was the observation regarding tokens of 14 million naira projects cited in the Ministry of Works budget, including that of Odukpani Ikodekpene Road, which the minister explained were optical illusions.
What I see here is more like a dissimulation, because 14 million is
NMPC project notional appropriation.
Okay, so this is just an optical illusion.
Yes.
We'll leave it there. Thank you.
Earlier, Umahi had lamented the poor releases for 2025, which he said was barely 9% of the total capital expenditure of 2.2 trillion naira. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Those who are distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Are we sure?
You would have thought that that was a scene from a Nollywood film, you know, particularly the encounter between the two senators, Onyekachi Nwabushi from Ebonyi State and Rufai Hanga, you know, who was presiding over the thing. I mean, there's a thing with the senator from Ebonyi, isn't it? Was he not the one that was all over the place during Natasha Putti Hudwa's, you know, issue?
Yes, but you know, very importantly, because you said distinguished senators, I don't believe that Senator. Yes, I don't believe Senator Nwabushi actually comports himself. I understand, but I even want to make the point very literal. I do not believe he comports himself in a manner expected of a distinguished senator.
Precisely what I'm saying.
As you pointed out, he was on the same program speaking about his colleague, Senator Natasha Putti Hudwa, in unprintable ways.
Yeah.
He also was the one who was engaged in a verbal back and forth with Obi Ezekwesili. There is a background here, and for him to speak to a colleague in the manner he did to Senator Hanga shows at least that maybe it's not just women who can get it from him.
Even when Senator Aline Dume drew his attention to the unacceptable nature of what he said, he still repeated, say, yes, you're from the minority.
And to what does that mean?
And a boy, for crying out loud, is what? You know, but
no. I don't even agree with you. But for me, what does it mean for a senator to be from the majority or the minority in terms of if he does want to be a praise singer for Dave Umahi, I would advise that he resign.
Because they're from the same states.
Okay, his political leader, of course. Yeah. But if he wishes to be a praise singer for Dave Umahi, he can resign and follow Dave Umahi around as Wike's band follows him around, and then he can do his praise singing.
No,
but if we're talking about,
he sings or dances.
Maybe no, because if that is essentially what he wants to use his time for, when we're speaking about very important things here, it is the people's money, it is oversight, it is accountability, and your co-members are telling you that it is time for us to do serious work here.
Absolutely.
We have the minister here; he's also a busy man who's doing important work. We have him here to speak about accountability for the funds of the Nigerian people, and you want to do praise singing, and because you are stopped, you're telling someone that I was voted with more votes than you. It is a misunderstanding. What does that mean for us?
I get the point that tempers can rise and that you can disagree with colleagues, but the manner, you know, the conduct, you know, the lack of decorum, you know, the area boy approach to things. I mean, there must be an ethics committee or something like that should be able to speak to senators like that.
Mind you, he's been a senator for 2 years.
It is his first time, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, he's almost 3 years now.
Okay, I guess. But you know, it's honestly unbecoming. It's unbecoming.
He needs to be tutored, I believe. You know, and that's, you know, saying it mildly. He needs to be tutored because it's becoming a pattern. You know, and I think that his constituents should also, you know, speak to him. It's not every time that you stand up shouting over every other person, you know, just to be heard, that you think you're right. That's not the way to conduct, particularly if you are trying to justify that you're a distinguished senator. That's what is expected of you. For those in the other chamber, they're expected to be honorables.
Yes.
You're expected to be a distinguished gentleman, but that's not what we are seeing.
And you know, and we must also go focus on the budget, because the budget 2025, we're doing appraisal. We're looking back on how the 2025 budget performed, as well as defending the 2026 budget allocations that they want. This is in a time where, of course, the Minister of Health said that only 36 million naira was received by his ministry for capital allocation. The Minister of Transportation said only 1% of his budget reached him. This is in a time where we're seeing that 34 billion naira over the past 2 years has been spent by the presidency for travel. We're seeing agencies of government spend millions, hundreds of millions on travel, on training, on purchase of motor vehicles. We must ask ourselves, in a time where we have to be very fiscally responsible as a nation, a budget that we are mortgaging not just our current selves for, but possibly our children's futures for, because we are borrowing. This is a budget where they approved $2.347 billion plug the shortfalls, and then 1.15 trillion naira of domestic loans to plug the shortfalls. We're being told that even after those plugs, even after those loans, even after that borrowing, that those shortfalls did not go for capital expenditure, the actual programs that go and benefit Nigerians' lives, but went to recurring expenditure, travel, purchasing motor vehicles, purchasing printers. Even police are spending hundreds of millions on cream cracker biscuits and Titus sardine and peak milk, and we're being told that we do not have budget for capital expenditure. It behooves us to ask that if ministries or MDAs are spending hundreds of millions to send people to abroad for training, but they can't spend money for affecting maternal mortality in Nigeria, it is a question. The SSAP of the president, and we'll see a report I did later, SSAP on women's health spent received at least 120 million naira for a banquet in the State House. 120 million naira that's supposed to go to the Renew Her agenda to help improve women's health in Nigeria. Meanwhile, 36 million is going to capital expenditure for the Ministry of Health. That's nearly 3 times what's going to a banquet launch than is going to the actual projects that would improve people's health in Nigeria.
Very concerning. Very, very concerning. 2 quick issues before we'll move on to another subject. Will be the issue raised by, I believe, Senator Adams Oshiomhole and a few others to Senator Umahi about dropping one acknowledged contractor for another that is not well known. I get the point that Senator Umahi, the minister, was making about challenging them for project assessment, and that if it fails, it will resign. I appreciate that. But then it goes beyond that. The point will be, at what point did you decide to leave one for the other? Leave Julius Berger for Mikano. How was the bidding process done? Who made the approval? Based on what track record? Not the expected, not the expectations that the job will be good and I challenge you to come and see it. No, we are talking about procedural, exercise. How was this thing done? Was it made public? The bidding process, the procedure, every other thing. That is important. And not only for Ministry of Works, for every other ministry who are, engaged in this sort of a thing.
100%.
The other part, very quickly, will be the constituency projects that keep on, rearing their heads. And as you know, there's no law, not in the National Assembly, not anywhere, that backs, this constituency thing. It is an arrangement that everybody has come to accept. But then every time it comes up, 40 million here, 400 million there, 1 billion there, and then we're hearing that, there's no senator, there's no House of Rep member that doesn't go home with at least 1 billion. So we don't always know who is going home with what. Is it for the constituency, or is it for those who are making the lobby? And then when they now come for budget defense, you're now querying, why is this money? You're a works ministry, why? Or you're a culture ministry, for example. Why do we have an overhead saying that there will be street lights, for example, and then the minister says it's for constituency project? How can we run a decent society, a tidy budget in that manner? I think this idea of constituency thing, ought to be debated, wholeheartedly, and let's see if it pays us. Because at the end of the day, most of these things that we are crediting, certain lawmakers for, they now own it. They put their names on it, and it's a constituency project, So for me, those are the issues that we'll need to look at if we want our democracy to truly, truly develop.
I really appreciate that you brought that, particularly that bidding process, because when we speak about transparency and accountability in our bid process and the contract award process, it's something we must discuss as the country looks to sell some of its assets, because that is the same conversation.
It has been announced by the Minister of Finance now.
Of course, because these are the conversations that we will continue to have. Is transparency, accountability.
Who are we hoping to sell what to? And what is the process?
Of course. And we must also consider when we're speaking about this award system, that many people have tracked our budget performance, and not all the projects that were actually awarded have been carried out. Even apart from the 2.2 trillion that's been owed to local contractors, there is at least 450 projects that was not even started, according to Budget and Tracker's own reporting. And so this is a conversation that we must be having in a country where we're running many budgets concurrently. When we have so much confusion, I think the confusion is intentional because it allows for lack of transparency. It allows for vagueness. And what you said also about this idea of constituency projects and projects being parked in ministries, that's confusing.
That have no bearing with such projects.
I was going through some of the expenditure by the presidency and the State House in the past year, and I saw the essay on SDGs that purchased for millions gas cookers for women in Bayelsa State. And the company was a media company. So, these are the questions, asking about Mikano and construction. I'm asking about gas cooker and media companies. It does seem that these type of transactions happen across board, not just in the executive, but it seems that, we must question our legislation as well. But they will also tell you, and I've had this conversation with lawmakers, if they go home and they say, I'm here to, and they say, I wrote this law, I passed this amendment, I spoke well in the House, the constituencies will ask, but how is the road? You didn't bring a road, you didn't bring a school, you didn't bring street lights, you didn't make boreholes. And so it goes hand in hand.
Every year we're doing boreholes, we're doing street lights.
It goes hand in hand.
Every year.
It goes hand in hand. But I think let's move on to our next story.
All right. Before we get to the guest, let's bring us up to date with current events elsewhere, this time in the United States, where President Trump has ordered the USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, to move from the Caribbean to the Middle East to join the USS Abraham Lincoln in the massive Armada aimed at pressuring Iran during high-stakes nuclear negotiations. Trump had said on Friday that the second aircraft carrier group will be heading to the Middle East, ramping up the military threat against Iran amid negotiations over its nuclear program. Mr. Trump is still in the news, as always. Your good friend.
The second aircraft carrier that you decided to send, talk about why you made that choice.
Well, in case we don't make a deal, we'll need it. If we don't have a deal, we'll need it. If we have a deal, we could cut it short. It'll be leaving very soon. We have one out there that just arrived. If we need it, we have it ready. A very big force.
What sort of a deal is Trump looking for with Iran when you are saying it's a deal or it's a war? Iran must be totally powerless, totally useless in their sight to think that except you agree to our terms. And I do get the point of, nuclear disarmament and things to look at for, for safer worlds and everything. But then the idea of I'm sending this, I'm sending that to the Middle East just in case you refuse to play ball. Isn't that intriguing?
I love that you're saying this, because I remember when he was running for election and I said Trump is likely to bring us into war, and you were like, oh no, Trump is a man of peace. He said America first, he wants to withdraw. And
my position hasn't changed.
Your position hasn't changed.
What Trump is doing about war is just because it is the one there. If it was Biden or Obama, America would do what it does best, and we know the type of wars that we saw.
The tactics that they use. So I think when we speak about Donald Trump's current positioning and this idea, every weekend it seems
an approach though.
Every weekend he's flirting with a new war. He has already, of course, bombed Iran in this administration, and I do think that oftentimes we do see that he tends to go into conflict when it's distracting distracting either from the Jeffrey Epstein files or, from corruption allegations.
Distracting from Jeffrey Epstein. He's the one releasing the files. Which his predecessor didn't.
Well, his Department of Justice, of course, the New York State is the one releasing the files.
No, I'm just putting that in so that we are reminded of who did what and who didn't do what. But, but this is a different conversation.
It is a different conversation, but I do think that when we look at what's going on in Iran, particularly with the people who have lost their lives there protesting, particularly with members of America's Intelligista or Israel's coming out to say that they had something to do with it, I think we have to be very wary, especially as Africans, especially when these people are also looking at us for new relationships or new drone charging locations. These are the type of things we should consider. In the same week, I believe over 10 Nigerians have died in the Ukraine war. I saw a Kenyan man being strapped with an IED, with an IED to be used as some sort of kamikaze, unwillingly, not voluntarily, and mocked and recorded on video. We're seeing Africans die in other people's war currently across the world, needlessly. And so I don't take it lightly when people start sending warships places, because you don't want them to look back here.
It would be very concerning.
It would be very concerning.
But we know that he likes to dramatize things in a funny way. Let's hope that this is part of, the art of the deal. Breathes down on people's neck and then gets what you want.
One can only hope to not take too seriously the President of the United States of America.